Do you think you have a horrible boss? Then you've never been an employee of Mr. Krabs. These are all the times when Mr. Krabs has been a terrible boss. Today we will review the worst decisions, attitudes, and moments in which Mr. Krabs showed that greed and leadership do not always go hand in hand. Today we have an episode that perfectly encapsulates all the reasons why you shouldn't work for him, even if you're a sponge with unwavering enthusiasm. So prepare for chaos, because I'm talking about Season 12's Boss for a Day. It all starts on any given day at the Krusty Krab, or as it might be called today, the Titanic of restaurants. Mr. Krabs is in his natural habitat, controlling absolutely everything while Bob and Squidward try to survive the chaos. But of course, Mr. Krabs is the boss, so he not only supervises but also cuts a burger for a baby while defending the restaurants from pirates. Because yes, apparently running a fast food business includes that too.
Takes a pretty steady claw to oversee this ship. What is it, girl? What do you smell? Whoa!
Find a penny, pick it up. All day long you'll have a penny.
Of course, Mr. Krabs, because clearly what motivates a boss is not the well-being of his employees but a penny found on the floor. And let's not forget that his pet-like claw has more personality than his cashier. If this isn't inspiring leadership, I don't know what is. But what can go wrong when you're too busy looking for coins instead of looking after your own safety? It's at that precise moment that Bob, being Bob, accidentally opens the kitchen door, knocks Mr. Krabs over, and sets off a sequence that can only be described a high-stakes physical comedy. Mr. Krabs bounces around a restaurant, flies into a nearby building, and ends up crushed by a piano. Because of course, if anything's gonna get him, it won't be his grade, it'll be a piano. When the ambulance arrives, amidst moans and pain, he makes a brilliant decision, leaving Bob in charge of the restaurant. A decision that, frankly, is like leaving a child in charge of a candy store.
Well, I guess if I want a boss like Mr. Krabs, I learn to think like Krabs.
Oh Bob, if thinking like Mr. Krabs is your mission, you're about to find out that being a terrible boss is a lot more complicated than it seems. But hey, the show must go on. Mr. Krabs returns shortly after, fully casted and being pushed in a wheelchair by a nurse. His grand entrance into the Krusty Krab is greeted by, what do you think? Another door in the face, courtesy of SpongeBob. If that's not a warm welcome back, I don't know what is. Now, what are the big changes for Bob as a boss? Well, absolutely none. Well, except for one small detail, he hired a new cook. And that cook is Patrick. And if you thought this might turn out well, I recommend adjusting your expectations. Patricio, in his infinite wisdom, he cooks meat with a spatula he has been keeping in his belly button and then decides to clean a machine with a rock. All this while Bob defends him, claiming that he taught him everything he knows. Oh yeah, Bob. Because if there's one thing Mr. Krabs would do, it's hire someone who doesn't even know you can't put a container of ketchup on a hot grill. Although, on second thought, maybe I would, if Patricio's salary was low enough. Things don't get much better. Bob tries to replicate Mr. Krabs' leadership, imitating his way of speaking and even placing a hat on Squidward's head to force him to smile. But the chaos continues to grow, and eventually Patrick gets fed up with the criticism and decides to quit. But not before undoing the door and turning it into a revolving door that causes Bob to slice a skinnier double of himself. With Patrick gone and Squidward also quitting, Bob decides that the best solution is to clone himself, and no, I'm not exaggerating. He literally continues to consciously cut himself into slices and sends one of them to work at a cash register. At first, everything seems under control, but as expected, problems start to pile up. Customers spill drinks, others hit televisions, and Bob, now in crisis. He thinks cloning himself will solve all the problems. Everything lightens up for a moment with a bunch of Bobs who look like dancing Oompa-Loomps, arranging everything and dancing with each other. But things get worse. Patrick comes back to get his things and accidentally leaves the door open. This causes a breeze to blow in and Bob's slices to fly into the ceiling fan, turning to ash. The restaurant becomes a complete mess. Customers run out in fear, and Mr. Krabs, furious, breaks his cast out of pure rage. Finally, after doing a lot of breathing exercises because apparently his time in the cast taught him to regulate his anger, Mr. Krabs regains control, but not before making it clear that Bob was the worst boss of all.
Mr. Krabs, you're better. Sorry I let you down. All I wanted was to be a good boss. Just like you.
Bob, my friend, nobody wants to be like Mr. Krabs except you, and that's exactly why this episode is on our list. Because only Mr. Krabs could turn his most loyal employee into an even more chaotic version of himself. Of course, Mr. Krabs finds a way to blame Bob for everything, causing his paycheck for decades to come to cover the damages. Because if we've learned anything, it's that nothing is more important to Mr. Krabs than his precious money. And if you thought Mr. Krabs couldn't beat his own record of bad decisions as a boss, let me tell you something, you're underestimating his talent for being the worst. Let's watch the next episode to find out. Season 2 Squid's Day Off opens with the promise of something beautiful. Squidward finally gets a break from his miserable job. But you know what would be even more beautiful? If Mr. Krabs wasn't the worst boss in the world and just let his employees enjoy their free time without developing an anxiety attack in the process. It all starts with a typical day at Krusty Krab with Squidward wishing he was anywhere else, while Bob finds a way to make even the smallest thing an extreme experience. Squidward is interrupted by a bell to take orders that Bob rings for no reason, accompanied by his characteristic laugh. So without thinking much, he goes to stop that irritating sound that brought him out of his constant complaining. But honestly, who can blame him? Working in this place is an endless spiral of misery, and the last thing you need is Bob turning every second into circus show. But then the inevitable happens. Squidward, in his frustration, hits the cash register and a few pennies fall out. And if there's one thing we've learned, it's that pennies are Mr. Krabs' bat signal. And before long, he bursts out of his office as if his life depended on it. And, to be honest, it probably does. He sees Squidward collecting the pennies and with the grace of a divorced father fighting over custody, snatches the coins from him while whispering sweet nothings to them as if they were his long-lost children. Can we just take a second to appreciate that this guy literally pushes his employee around just to talk to him for coins? Anyway, like any good financial psychopath, Mr. Krabs runs to the kitchen to wash the coins because, obviously, his personal hygiene is less important than the cleanliness of a penny. And that's when Bob springs into action with the precision of a chaos surgeon. He touches an inch of Mr. Krabs and he drops a coin down the drain. He tries to pull it out, but his massive claws are no help, but tries and, well, he ends up dismembered and flying across the kitchen in a sequence of animated violence so absurd it should come with a medical warning. The result, Mr. Krabs ends up with a blow the size of his greed and the ambulance picks him up to take him to the hospital, but not before making his biggest mistake, leaving Squidward in charge. Squidward's eyes shine with excitement that can only be compared to that of a prisoner seeing the prison door open. Without a second thought, he gives Bob a promotion, leaving him in charge of the cash register and the kitchen, basically doing all the work, while he goes to relax. Bob, in his infinite naivety, believes that this is the best day of his life. We can't blame him, he's our square sponge seeing the good and kind side of people. Meanwhile, Squidward is already at home enjoying his freedom.
Well, Squidward, you've really outdone yourself this time. A beautiful day of relaxing and pampering with pay. Guess I do feel kind of bad for poor little SpongeBob. All by his lonesome. Oh, it'll pass. He's probably just standing at the register with that stupid grin on his face.
Oh, Squidward, you deluded little fool. Did you really think you could just enjoy yourself of a day off without being consumed by paranoia and guilt? What a fool. And sure enough, as soon as he closes his eyes, his mind starts sabotaging him with images of Bob ruining everything. The most absurd of all being Bob giving all the money in the till to Patrick for change of a coin. And let's be honest, who hasn't worked with someone like that? Squidward, unable to relax, runs back to the crab to find that Bob is completely fine and everything is still in order, especially the money. So he heads back home. This goes on and on and on. First he walks quickly, then he runs, again and again. He goes from the Krusty Krab to his house, his eyes growing more bulging, his dark circles more pronounced, and his sanity hanging by a thread. I just don't understand why he just doesn't rest at the restaurant. Honestly, he likes to suffer. At this point, he's no longer a squid, he's a man possessed. His mind is a battlefield between logic and paranoia wins by knockout. He no longer cares about what people will say or his dignity or even his clothes, because after countless comings and goings, his final run towards the crustacean is completely naked. Yes, folks, Mr. Krabs has managed to do the impossible, turn an already demotivated employee into an empty shell of pure stress. A day off more like a descent into madness.
No matter what sick fantasies run through my mind, I will not go back to that restaurant.
The eternal struggle of the mind against reality. But guess what? The mind wins, because after locking himself in his house with 1,000 padlocks, Squidward ends up fleeing to the crab again, completely defeated by his own stress. Passing by the hospital, just then, Mr. Krabs sees him in his worst state, and in a classic act of cosmic karma, the pliers fall again. Finally, Squidward resigns himself and sits down at the cash register. Bob lends him some clothes because he was effectively only covered by the bubbles that are slowly dissolving, and nobody wants to see the last bubble disappear. Just then, Bob returns with a sign at the entrance.
Hey, Squidward! You know what? Look! We forgot to switch the close sign to open! It's almost like we could have taken the whole day off!
And that's how the Krusty Krab became a self-imposed hell. If Mr. Krabs was a good boss, none of them would have gone through this. But then again, we're talking about the guy who almost died over a penny. So there you have it, another day, another moment in which Mr. Krabs proves that the only thing bigger than his obsession with money is his incompetence as a boss. But wait until you see what he did when he used his daughter as a bargaining chip to make a few bucks. But don't worry, this is a shining example of how to be a terrible boss 101. The episode begins with Mr. Krabs gathering all the employees of the Krusty Krab, and for what? To announce that his daughter Pearl is going to work at the restaurant during the summer holidays. And it's not just any girl, it has a lot of innovative ideas to attract younger customers. Of course, because nothing screams quality restaurant like a teenager with Pinterest-based marketing ideas. Mr. Krabs' daughter makes her grand entrance, and no, she's not just another teenager. It's Perlita with all the attitude of someone who thinks she's in control of the situation, and to make it even more dramatic, she's carrying a box. What could this box be? Everyone is wondering. A radical change of life? A bright future for the Krusty Krab? And there we have it, Pearl's first big change. An ugly uniform that makes SpongeBob look like a poster for design fail. And to no one's surprise, he's thrilled with his new look. He didn't think twice. He wore it and, well, he embraced it in a big way because, of course, SpongeBob will never question anything he's asked to do. But the funniest thing is that Mr. Krabs also uses it and forces Squidward to use it. From there we moved on to Pearl's stellar idea, renaming the Krusty Krab the Pampered Crab. Because we all know that today's teens only want to eat at places that sound good on an Instagram hashtag. And what better way to destroy what was once an iconic restaurant than with a decoration worthy of a 15th birthday party? The Krusty Krab has never looked so cheesy. Between the pink hearts and balloons, it looks like a teddy bear souvenir shop than a burger joint. But Pearl knows best, right? And as expected, there is no happy worker than Squidward, who, of course, is happy to have a teenager in charge. And just in case his enthusiasm wasn't obvious, he takes it upon himself to express his opinion as always.
Don't bother. Only a fool would wear that.
I couldn't be more right. Only a fool, literally, he would put on that uniform, and guess what? Squidward has no intention of being that fool. And if you've ever felt trapped in a situation that you can't change, you'll totally relate to him. On the other hand, Perlita continues to destroy the crustacean as if she were boning a leaf, because she changes the menu completely, only leaving salad and tea. That's right, after smelling the delicious crab burgers in that place that was once happy, he just makes bland salad. Of course, this is a low blow to Bob, who only lives to cook the best burgers in all of Bikini Bottom. So without further ado, she talks to Mr. Krabs in his office, who is initially unconvinced until she starts listing off every new item in the place and its hefty price tag on the side. Like a list, our stingy crab doesn't know how to fire her until he comes up with a brilliant idea to have Bob do it. When our faithful sponge is about to say the most pious farewell, Perlita begins to cry. It turns out that she never wanted to work, she only did it to please her father. So Bob proposes the idea that was evidently already agreed upon with Mr. Krabs, but avoiding that simple detail, very clever and prudent our friend Bob. So Bob says goodbye to Pearl in front of Mr. Krabs' office while he suffers inside for breaking his little daughter's heart. But as soon as he sees himself in the horrible uniform and takes a look at the safe, he backs her from stopping that vile act. As soon as he finishes saying goodbye to her father, Perlita gratefully kisses Bob and leaves with her friends. Meanwhile, on the other side of the door, there is a fainted Krab in pain from what he did. But Bob wakes him with the smell of a $20 bill and makes him understand that his daughter took it very well. Cut to Mr. Krabs does not hesitate any longer, but he's worried about what he's going to do with all those large objects and cakes. Cut B. Bob is dancing around with all those completely unnecessary objects in his house. For only the small cost of his 1 year's salary, it's nothing for an optimistic sponge. And so concludes another glorious chapter. The lesson here: Mr. Krabs, the king of business, continues to prove that when it comes to his daughter's feelings, money will always be more important. And SpongeBob, well, SpongeBob is still the hero who always seems to get all the work done. What else is new? Now, how else can he exploit his employees and be even more terrible? You can't miss it because he always has something up his sleeve and he's not afraid to use it. As in one of the most subtle episodes of his toxic leadership, The Lost Mattress, which proves that being a horrible boss is almost an art. But don't worry, this isn't just any SpongeBob episode. It's an episode where everything that's wrong with capitalism in Bikini Bottom is laid bare in its purest form in Season 4, Squidward. A being who is already in a bad mood, but today he manages to find a more spectacular way to ruin his day. He arrives late for work and hits the door. We know he has a talent for misfortune, but today he is late for work, the prize. And meanwhile, SpongeBob is on the verge of a nervous breakdown because the Krusty Krab is closed. Because who needs to be organized when you can just open it whenever you want? Mr. Krabs drops his key, and what do we have here? A second-rate CEO crawling around on the floor, all because of his back. The pain of old age and a mattress that clearly needs more than just a change of sheets. This boss, who is always complaining about expenses, should have been smarter and considered that the real problem is his chronic greed. But no, it only makes sense that Bikini Bottom's best employee would take it upon himself to fix his health problems, thinking about buying him a new mattress. Bob suggests that Squidward come along, but we already know that's never going to happen. So Bob and Patrick, the most enthusiastic and innocent of the bunch, decide they're going to save Mr. Krabs from his misery by buying him a mattress. The irony of it all, they come upon a mattress store that looks more like a pile of supplies than a legitimate establishment. And of course, the store has many mattresses that one of them must surely work for a guy who sleeps on a pile of pennies. But Bob and Patrick, in their joy at making something useful, end up trying out mattresses as if they were buying a bed for a rock tour. Some are uncomfortable, some are dangerous, but hey, who needs more trouble when you already work with Mr. Krabs? Meanwhile, in the corner of the store, Squidward, beyond being useful, is doing exactly what he does best, not being useful. So when the kids show him their brilliant idea, all he does is sign a card they made with a scribble. But watch out, let's not forget that the same man who continues nothing always takes the credit for everything good that happens. Mr. Krabs is now ready to sleep on the rock that he uses as a bed, and as soon as he lies down, he feels something different.
We noticed how miserable you were on your lumpy old mattress.
Mr. Krabs stands stiff, listening to those words, and as expected, Squidward takes the credit for such a magnificent plan. But not only that, he also confirms that the old mattress is already under all the trash in Bikini Bottom.
My money was in that mattress!
What? Haven't you ever heard of a bank?
Oh my god, this is completely normal. Mr. Krabs, the man who kept all his money in a dirty old mattress. But of course, why spend money on a safe deposit box or a bank when you can trust your mattress to do the dirty work? The level of trust he has in that cushion is almost like the trust he has in his employees, 0. And, of course, like any good boss, Mr. Krabs can't take responsibility for his own decisions. After destroying his room in a fit of rage, he ends up in a coma from stress. Excellent example of leadership, right? After all, being a terrible boss is an art, and Mr. Krabs has a master's degree in it. So, he's taken to the hospital, Sure, after months of sleeping on a mattress so old it could be considered a monument to discomfort, his back is finally taking its toll. But the only way he'll wake up is when he gets his mattress back, evidently with all his money inside. Of course, his store employees head to the dumpster to retrieve his much prized mattress. Just when it seemed like Mr. Krabs would be in a coma forever, the doctors realize that he doesn't have insurance, so they throw him out into the hallway like someone throwing trash into a dumpster. What could be more logical than treating a patient in the most undesirable way possible? Now, in another unexpected twist of fate, our heroes Mr. Bob and Patrick, accompanied by a very dubious Squidward, venture into the dumpster, retrieve Mr. Krabs' mattress, but of course, fate doesn't rest easy because they realize that on top of the precious mattress, there is a huge god worm. And as if this wasn't enough, Squidward has a brilliant idea: use Bob and Patrick as bait to distract the worm. There's nothing like delegating responsibility to the weakest, right, Squidward? For a moment, Bob and Patrick have everything under control as Bob grabs a wooden spoon to defend himself, and this makes the worm think that he is playing. But since they're the ones, they throw it near the mattress, which is right where Squidward is, and they have to come up with another master plan. Meanwhile, Mr. Krabs, still in a coma, is whirled into the nothingness on his stretcher, which lands him in the dumpster, and as if it were a scene from an action movie, he falls straight onto his mattress, waking up to the smell of the money.
It's me money. Oh, money. I promise I'll never leave you alone again.
That's right, nothing says recovery like the smell of money. This man really doesn't know that what's driving him crazy is an unhealthy relationship with money. The giant worm, annoyed by all this chaos, tries to attack Mr. Krabs, but as always, Mr. Krabs has a brilliant solution in sight. And what does he do? He knocks the worm away with one blow, as if it were a simple insect, all to protect his money. And so concludes another episode of How to Be a Horrible Boss. Again, proving that his only interest is his money and his bad decisions. If you ever thought that a boss couldn't be worse, wait until you see this man. He's definitely an example of what not to do if you want to be a good leader.